पारिजाताय तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः. Hare Krishna. Welcome back to our Bhagavad Gita Bhakti Shastri course. We are now in the heart of the 18th chapter. We're discussing Jnana, Karma and Karta within the three modes. So in verses 21 and 22 of the 18th chapter we have discussed karma, jnana in goodness and jnana in passion. We discussed in 20 and 21. So let's move forward to 22, where is knowledge and ignorance. This seems to be a paradox of content. Knowledge and ignorance are considered opposite. So let's see what is this knowledge and ignorance. Yattu kritsnavadekasmin karye saktamahaitukam अतत्वार्थवदल्पं च तत्तामसमुदाहृतं यत्तु कृत्स्नवद् एकस्मिन्. If ekasmin, there is only one thing that is a reality. So to consider one part of reality to be the totality of reality, that is knowledge in the mode of ignorance. So kritsnavid means everything. So to think of ekasmin is one thing. To think of one thing to be everything, that is the tamasamudarutam. So that's first thing. One thing is everything. What are the other characters? Karye saktam ahetukam. Karye saktam. That means to become attached to one activity as if it is the totality, as if it is everything. Ahetukam. The word ahetukam is normally used in a positive sense to refer to ahetuki bhakti. That's how we use it. But here ahetukam refers to causeless in the sense of being logicless, senseless. So it's not in the sense of being transcendental or unmotivated or pure. It is in the sense of having no rational basis, having no intelligent basis to things. Atattvarthavad alpam cha atattvarthavad. So that which does not have any tattvartha, that which does not have any true meaning to it, tattva artha, true meaning, true value to it, alpam cha, and that deals with only a part of reality. It only looks, it is meager knowledge, it is not complete knowledge. So tat tamasamudharitam, that is knowledge in the mode of ignorance. Let's try to understand this further. So Krishna is not calling specific things as ignorance or knowledge in mode of ignorance, but he is giving the generic characteristics. And depending on time, place, circumstance, depending on the various different schools of thought that are present at different times, some of them can be classified in goodness, some in passion, and some in ignorance. Now here, first of Krishna's explanation is in terms of knowledge which makes one attached to one fragment of reality. Ekasmin karye saktam. That one becomes too attached to one fragment of reality as if it is the complete reality. Yattu kritsnavad ekasmin. Ekasmin. One thinks of one thing to be complete. Karye saktam ahaitukam. And one is too attached to things, not understanding their completeness, not understanding their reality, totality. So for example, we have materialism today. Materialism is a widespread school of thought, and materialism is often considered to be progressive. People think that when we are becoming materialistic, they think that we are giving up the old-fashioned, pre-scientific, mythology based ideas of different religious dogmas. But what does materialism actually have as its end result? Materialism essentially leads to assuming a part of reality, that is matter, to be the totality of reality, and it's obviously an incomplete part of reality. We are not matter-based creatures. We are spirit-based creatures. Matter is something which is our outer covering. It is not our inner substance. So when we mistake the outer covering to be both, not just outer but also inner, to be everything, then that leads to knowledge in the mode of ignorance. So what is this knowledge in the mode of ignorance? So it's knowledge means, now if we look at, there are many materialistic thinkers, and in their own way they have their own logic, they have their own intellectual brilliance, and by that they try to explain things. But the problem is their vision is unidimensional. They have reduced a polydimensional reality, that which is polydimensional. Polydimensional means there are many aspects to reality. There is matter, there is spirit, and there is the Supreme Lord who is the source of matter and spirit. So there are multiple aspects to reality. They've just taken one aspect of it and assumed it to be the totality of reality, and then based on this misconception they try to analyze and explain how everything has come about. So therefore, when a mother feels love for the child, they try to explain, or how it is nothing but some secretion of chemicals in the brain, and just because certain biochemicals are secreted in the brain, that's how they try to explain emotions. And that's how these reductionistic materialists, they try to explain everything in terms of matter. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about such knowledge, that jiva ke karaye gadha. So he says that such knowledge, what does it do? There is knowledge, but it makes a person no better than an animal like a donkey. So people work very hard, and working hard itself is not bad, but working hard for a meaningful purpose is desired, not for a valueless, not for something which is not actually valuable. So yattu Krishnavad ekasmin. One takes only one aspect of reality and assumes it to be the complete reality. Karye saktam ahaitukam. Karye saktam. When one is attached and one becomes without a logical basis. Nobody has demonstrated how, say, matter has led to the emergence of consciousness, nor has it been explained theoretically to any reasonable degree of satisfaction. And yet, that is assumed to be the default way of looking at things today. So, going back to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Vidya Ravilase song, so he says that Jada Vidyayata Mayara Vaibhava Tomara Bhajane Badha. Jada Vidyayata. Jada refers to matter, which is unconscious, which lacks in consciousness, so it's called Jada. Jada Vidyayata Mayara Vaibhava. That this is actually the opulence in illusion. It is no actual opulence. It is false opulence. Jada Vidyayata Mayara Vaibhava. So Mayara Vaibhava means, suppose a person becomes a billionaire in a dream. No, the person is a billionaire, but it's in a dream. Now how long is it going to last? It's a Mayara Vaibhava. But then Jada Vidyayata Mayara Vaibhava. Jiva ke karaye gadha tomara bhajane badha. So it describes there are two consequences of it. What is it? Jiva ke karaye gadha. That it makes a person live like the word is very strong, donkey. It's a very strong word, but it's used to indicate how the person's functional as well as intellectual faculties are not used at a level much higher than animals. And such kind of knowledge is Tomara Bhajane Badha. It is a badha, it's an obstacle in worshipping Krishna, in devoting oneself to Krishna. Because when one is not worshipping Krishna like this, or when one is obsessed with material knowledge, and one thinks that material knowledge contains the solution to all problems, then one doesn't feel the need for God. And that's why it becomes a Tomara Bhajane Badha. And we see, in the history of modern intellectual history, which is largely Western history nowadays, because the European and then subsequent American, the European thinkers, Europe's civilization spread all over the world over a period of time. So the European thinkers, their thoughts spread all over the world also over a period of time. So jiva ke karaye gadha, tomara bhajane badha. So what happened is, in the perceived conflict between science and religion, it was thought that science won. Starting from the point when Galileo Copernicus, they they won the conflict against the church about the nature of the universe, whether it's heliocentric or geocentric. If you look at the history from that point of view, what happened is most people thought that science has all the answers and science does not need God. And because of these twin conceptions that science has the answers and science does not need God, the result was that many people became enamored by science, and that enamorment with material knowledge, which infatuation with material knowledge, led to people giving up God. So tomara bhajane badha. And same way what will happen is, the more people turn away from get intoxicated with material knowledge, the more they will feel the lack of necessity for God. But if people keep acquiring material knowledge without getting infatuated by it, then as several thinkers like Pascal has said, a little of God, a little of science takes person away from God, but immersion in science brings one back to God. So there are quotes like this by various scientists also and various thinkers. So let's move forward. So this is knowledge in the mode of ignorance, where one assumes a fragment of reality to be the totality of reality. So basically, when Krishna is analyzing this way, the thrust of his argument is, don't live in ignorance, try to live in goodness. So let's look at the next verse. So this 18.23. Niyatam sangarahitam aragadveshatah kritam afalaprepsuna karma yattat satvikam uchyate. So niyatam sangarahitam. So what is he talking about? Satvika karma. So karma and satvika comes in the last two lines. So he's talking now about jnanam karma cha karta cha. That's what was mentioned in the 19th verse. Three things Krishna will be talking about. So 19, 20, so 20, 21, 22 talked about jnana. Now 23 to 25 will talk about karma. So this verse talks about karma in goodness. So niyatam sangarahitam. Niyatam means that which is prescribed by scripture. Sangarahitam. Sangarahitam means that which is done without any attachment. Aragadveshatah kritam. Aragadveshatah. When one does not have attachment and one does not have aversion. Afala prepsuna karma. Afala prepsuna means that without the motivation of the fruit of the result. Yattat satvikam uchyate. So we will see this a consistent theme in the Gita, that as long as we are attached to the fruit of work, to the extent we cannot think about the transcendental reality which exists beyond the realm of action and its fruit. So that's why Krishna wants us to raise our consciousness to spiritual reality, and that's why he repeatedly urges us to not be attached to material fruits, because material fruits will bind us in material existence. So aragadveshatah kritam, without any attachment or aversion. Now in 18.24 Krishna will talk about action in the mode of passion. Yattu kamepsuna karma sahankarena va punha kriyate bahulayasam tadrajasam udharatam. So rajasam udharatam, that is in the mode of passion. What is it? Yattu kamepsuna karma. Kamepsuna, the work which is done with the desire, with worldly desires. So kamepsuna, one has kama for the fruits of the work, and sahankarena va punaha ahankara. Ahankara means arrogance, the thinking that I am the doer. So sinaham krito bhavo buddhiryasya na lipyate. A few verses earlier Krishna has talked about in 18.16, 17 that one who is nahankrito bhavo, one who does not have any ahankar, that person will not be bound. But now he's talking about sahankare nava punaha. When a person has ahankar, Kriyate bahula yasam. Bahula means after great trouble. That is involving severe labor. So this is referring to Ugra karma. Kriyate bahulayasam. So Ugra karma can be in passion, Ugra karma can also be in ignorance. It depends on the specific activity and the consciousness in which that activity is done. So Kriyate bahulayasam. So actually the work which is in the passion and which is in ignorance, it's not the same. But many times that which is in passion goes down into ignorance after some time. So Kriyate bahulayasam. Tatattamasam udharutam. In the Amrut Manthan Leela, which is described in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the demons and the demigods both make a truce so that they will churn the milk ocean. So when they are about to churn the milk ocean, at that time, they find that each of them, they both of them want to hold on to the head and not the tail, because the idea is they think the head is the more honorable part of the snake Vasuki and the tail is not an honorable part. So they both want to hold on to the head and not the tail. And the Lord sees the obstinacy, the stubbornness of the Asuras and agrees to let them hold the head. And they first rebel against the Lord's allocating them the tail, and the Lord allows them to hold the head. And then what happens? When Vasuki is being pulled used as a rope to churn the milk ocean, at that time from his mouth poisonous flames start coming out, and those flames scorch and torment the demons. So the demons work hard. Prabhupada writes in the purports over there, demons work very hard without profit even to themselves. Without profit even to themselves. That means they work without gaining anything at all, either for themselves or of course for others. They didn't benefit the Devatas and they didn't benefit themselves, so they had to trouble themselves. So Kriyate bahulayasam. So often work in the mode of passion, one feels dragged to do more and more and more, and one never feels satisfied no matter how much one does. No matter how much one does, one feels, oh, I'm not satisfied. I want something more. And one never gets satisfied that way. So Kriyate bahulayasam tad rajasamudaritam. Now after describing this, Krishna moves forward and then anubandham kshayam himsam anapeksha cha paurusham mohalarabhyate karma yattattamasamuchyate. So anubandham kshayam himsam. That kind of, the Krishna is talking about work in the mode of ignorance here. Anubandham, that which causes bondage. Now, all work causes bondage, but more in ignorance, it is especially and excruciatingly binding often. Just like there are addictions. The addictions, they are like vicious bindings which people just find it very difficult to break through. Kshayam himsam. Kshaya is violence, destruction. Akshaya is the opposite, that is not destructible. Kshayam. So when people, for example, terrorism, vandalism, all these are actions in the mode of ignorance. Kshayam. Kshaya is destruction. Himsa is violence. So now we wonder, what is the difference between Kshaya and Himsa? Both seem to be similar. So generally speaking, Kshaya refers to things and Himsa refers to people. We talk about Ahimsa. Ahimsa means non-violence. So non-violence generally we talk about against people. When somebody hits others, somebody attacks others, brutalizes others, that is considered a violent person. And destructive is often with respect to things. Somebody gets angry and punches a fist on the table and cracks the table, or hurls things and breaks them. So anubandham kshayam himsam. So in mode of passion, mode of ignorance, either one is violent against people or destructive towards things. So this is a very self-defeating kind of action. Anapeksha cha paurusham. So anapeksha. Now we will see that words can have different meanings depending on their context. So the words may sound similar, but they may have no similarity in their meaning actually. So anapeksha shuchir daksha. So in the qualities of a devotee which I mentioned in the 12th chapter of the Gita, anapekshaha. Anapekshaha is referred to as a devotee who does not have expectations from other things. But whereas here the word anapeksha that is used is not in terms of expectation, but it's in terms of consideration. One is so reckless, one is so foolhardy that one doesn't think about consequences. One acts recklessly, self-destructively. So anapeksha cha paurusham. So paurusham here refers to harshness. Harshness means in terms of speech, the person is not sensitive, the person is monstrously insensitive and speaks bad words, uses foul language, and also speak and thinks that to speak insultingly, is it's as if it is something very intelligent, a sign of cleverness. Sometimes people make a parody of things. Parody means they make a caricature, they imitate in a mocking way, and by that they try to prove how actually whatever is being told is not correct. But they, rather than doing constructive criticism, they do destructive criticism. And destructive criticism means their goal is not to improve upon what another person has suggested. Their goal is to destroy the person's idea and destroy the person's morale also. So that is paurusham. And this is often seen as, unfortunately, in some circles it's seen as a sign of cleverness. The more stingingly a person can taunt somebody else, the cleverer that person is considered. Oh, what a taunt you made! What a comment you made! Actually, this is not a sign of cleverness. Of course, it may require cleverness to come up with taunts, but the point is that when one speaks in a way that hurts others and one delights in the hurt that one is causing, then that is tamasic. Actually, the pure devotee is ready to take off suffering so that others can become free from suffering. Para dukkha dukhi. Pure devotees they consider they become unhappy when they see others unhappy, and they want to relieve others' unhappiness, and for that purpose they are ready to take up anxiety upon themselves. As contrasted in very tragically perverted ways that those who consider that by causing pain to others I'll get pleasure. So this is mohad arabhyate karma. Mohad arabhyate. So paurusham can mean harshness. Prabhupada translates it over here also as self-sanctioned. The word paurusha can also dambho darpo manascha krodha parushyameva cha. There's a similar word while describing the qualities of the demoniac in 16.4. Krodha parushya. Parushya is harshness. So here Prabhupada refers to paurusham. So again, it's a similar sounding word. Prabhupada translates as self-sanctioned. Self-sanctioned means, one imagines that one can do it because one is clever enough. Whatever I feel like doing, I will do it because ultimately it's my life. I can choose whatever I want to do. So parusham. And mohad arabhyate. We discussed earlier. The word moha is very common when describing the mode of ignorance. Even while describing renunciation in the three modes in the start of this chapter itself, Krishna talks about moha tasya parityagas. That when one does tyaga because of moha, that is considered to be in the mode of ignorance. Yatta tamasam uchyate, that is tamasam. That is in the mode of ignorance. Then Krishna moves forward to the next verse. Let's discuss what Krishna is talking about now. So now he's talking about karta, the three types of karta in the next three verses, 26, 27, 28. Mukta sango anaham vadi nritya utsaha samanvitaha siddhya siddhyor nirvarkaraha karta satvika uchyate. So mukta sango anaham vadi. So here there is mukta sangha. One is not attached to one's own activities. One is not attached to the fruits of the activity. One liberated from that attachment to the fruits. And anahamvadi. One doesn't imagine oneself to be the doer. one understands that whatever success comes about, there are multiple factors involved in that success. And I am alone not the doer. Dhrutya utsaha samanvitaha. Dhrutya utsaha. So there is samanvitaha means imbued with, permeated with, filled with, Prabhupada is qualified with. Dhrutya and utsaha, determination and enthusiasm. So we have discussed this earlier when we discussed utsaha, nishchaya, dhairyad. In our discussion, the Updesha Amrit, when we are talking about the factors that are favorable and the factors that are unfavorable. So dhrutya utsaha samanvitaha. So actually, when there is enthusiasm without patience, actually what a person needs to make long-term progress is enthusiasm and determination. It's like if a person has to go on a one has to go cross country, say. One has to go by car from here to Calcutta. Maybe it's a 50-hour journey or a 30-hour journey, whatever. Long journey it is. Then one has to go on a long journey, one has to have determination, but along with that one has to have enthusiasm also. If one doesn't have enthusiasm, then one will not embark on the journey only. And even if one has enthusiasm, one will not be able to sustain that enthusiasm if one doesn't have determination. So in goodness, one has enthusiasm and determination. Dhrutya utsaha samanvitaha. So sometimes people think of goodness as life in goodness as a very boring life. Think of life in goodness as a life in slow motion. Life in slow motion means the thing that, okay, because I'm in goodness, I have to do everything slowly. Maybe I should not speak fast. Maybe I should not run fast. I should not do activities fast. Slow, slow, slow. Well, slowness is not necessarily a defining characteristic of the mode of goodness. In the mode of goodness, the defining characteristic is there is contemplation before action. There is contemplation before action. That means one thinks, one reasons, and then one decides what one is going to do. That is action in the mode of goodness. And in contrast to that, in the mode of passion, actually there is action, and after that there is thinking, oh, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Then there is lamentation also which comes up. So that kind of action first and thought later, that often leads to regretful actions. So now if a person is well organized, is well thought out, has clear principles, then the person's contemplation will be quick and clear, and then the action will follow. So a person can work fast also. It's not that a person in goodness has to necessarily work slowly. A person in goodness can work fast. The only difference is that the person in goodness who is working fast and the person in passion who is working fast. The externally both may be fast, but a person in passion is actually in bondage, is in illusion, is not contemplating properly, is not weighing the consequences of one's actions. So whereas a person in goodness is weighing the consequences of actions. That's why it's called as Dhrutya utsaha samanvitaha. There's enthusiasm and there's determination. Both are there, and by this the person can move on steadily. And Krishna describes further, Siddhya siddhyo nirvikaraha. Nirvikaraha. Vikara means change. Nirvikaraha means no change. So in such a person, whether the person gets success or failure, there is no change. Siddhi asiddhyo nirvikaraha. Nirvikaraha means there is no change. Things remain the same and the person moves forward. Karta satvika uchyate. Such a person is satvika karta. Is karta in the mode of goodness. And after that, Krishna will move forward and describe action in the mode of passion. Ragi karma phala prepsur lubdo himsatmako shuchihe harsha sokan vitah karta rajasa parikirtitaham. Ragi karma phala prepsur. So ragi means very much attached. One who is filled with raga. Like kami means a person who is filled with kama. So ragi is a person who is filled with attachment. Ragi karma phala prepsur. Such a person is very attached to karma phala. Wants the fruits of one's work very quickly. Lubdho himsa atmako shuchihi. Lubdho is greedy. Himsa atmako shuchihi. Himsa atmako is always envious. So the word Atmako can be related with the word Atma. So Himsa Atmako means actually for such a person, Himsa is the essence. The person thinks that action means there has to be violence. Otherwise, what's the fun? One does violence. Himsa Atmako Shuchihi. And then Harsha Shokan Vitaha Karta. So we can compare this. Dhritya Utsaha Samanvita was there for the Karta in the goodness. And here it Harsha Shokanvita. What is the difference? Harsha and Shoka are the results of action. When one does action and when one gets the result, if the result is positive, then the result is desired, one gets jubilation. And Shoka, if one doesn't get the result, then there is dejection. So what is happening is, when for a person in the mode of passion, the focus is not on the action but on its consequence. So this sort of short-sighted attitude or imbalanced attitude, lopsided attitude, where one doesn't focus on the process, only on the product, that leads to underperformance and entanglement further. Why underperformance? Because if one wants to do well, then one has to concentrate on what one is doing right now. If while giving a class I'm constantly thinking, okay, will people like my class? Will people appreciate it? How many people will praise it? Who will praise me what? Now, this is all stupidity. When I am supposed to give class, then just I have to zoom in and focus only on the class and nothing else. And that is the only way I will be able to be productive. So similarly, if I want to be productive, then I have to focus on the action. So that focus on the action comes by Dhruti Utsaha Samanvita, which was talked about in the 26th verse. Dhruti Utsaha. Dhruti it is determination, Utsaha is enthusiasm. But instead of that, here there is Harsha Shokanvitaha. So we have to learn to focus on Harsha, not on Harsha Shoka, on not get carried away by the results, whether they be positive or they be negative, but rather focus on the commitment to the process in terms of determination and enthusiasm. So in passion, one's focus is very much on externals. People, when they say there is a weightlifting competition and there's a weightlifter who has a huge quantity of weight, maybe whatever is the record, that quantity of weight the person lifts. When the person lifts that quantity of weight, people are saying, okay, how much weight did the person lift? Okay, this person was maybe 50 pounds, maybe 5 pounds more than the earlier record, or 10 pounds more than the earlier record, 7 pounds more than the earlier record, and the earlier record was this much. So what the records focus on is the results. Okay, this much weight was lifted, but how was that person able to lift that much weight? If it's truly a champion weightlifter, then before that the person has exercised and the person has built muscles on a long-term basis through rigorous, unflinching training, and only then has come to the result. So if one is too captivated by the result and doesn't focus on the process, then the person will not work. And even if one works, one is just like students. If they only think of the marks that come in the exam, and then when they get the marks, they'll be jubilant, and if they don't get the marks, they will be morose. But then the unidimensional focus on marks doesn't allow them to study properly. Some students may have the skill how they just memorize the necessary information just before the exams, and then regurgitate it, just vomit it out during the exams and get good marks. But that doesn't lead them to mastery of the subject, nor does it lead to the development of their intellectual capacity, their capacity to learn, the development of their mind. So it doesn't lead to that. Therefore, what is important is that one focus on the process, and that focus on the process happens in goodness, but it's difficult to have. It rarely happens in passion, because in passion everything is focused on externals, not on internals. So what one sees is how much marks has the person got, not how much one has studied. Okay, how much weight is the person lifted, not how much exercise the person has done. So Rajasa Parikirditaha, Krishna says such an action, such a person is in the mode of, such a doer is in the mode of passion. Now, what essentially is the difference between karma and karta? Karma refers to the specific activities that are being done, whereas karta refers to the person who is doing the activities. Or sometimes the person may be in goodness, but the person may have to do passionate activity. On the other hand, the person may be in passion and the person may have to do goodness activity. So that can vary depending on time, place, circumstance. For example, teaching, we could call it broadly activity in goodness. Why is teaching an activity in goodness? Because teaching essentially involves the principle of, it's focused on subtle things. Okay, there is knowledge, which is a subtle concept. We understand it, we internalize it, and then we share it with others. And when we see others are learning, that gives a sense of fulfillment. So that is positive. But at the same time, if somebody is teaching just for the sake of prestige, the person is not really concerned whether I have knowledge or not. The person is not concerned whether others are learning or not. The person is simply concerned with displaying how much I know. I know so much. So there are some different kinds of teachers. Some teachers, they delight in showing how foolish their students are. That means they speak things in such confusing and complex ways that students think, I don't understand anything. And when that happens, the person's ego may be, teacher's ego may be very tickled. Say, these people, they thought they're so clever, now I have shown how foolish they are. But then has that led to the increase of learning? Has that led to the increase in the desire to learn among the students? If it has not, then what is the use? So this is undesirable. There are other kinds of teachers who just focus on analyzing the subject without considering the audience. That means that they just go deep into the subject and they think I have to do justice to the subject. But what about doing justice to the audience? They speak in such a lofty way. It's not that they want to necessarily impress others, but it's just that they're not concerned about the others. So there are some people who just want to impress the audience. Some people are indifferent to the audience, and some people want to educate the audience actually. Help. So these are the best teachers. They understand. Okay, this is the level of the audience, and if I start from this level, then I can move upwards, and the teacher students can learn. So that is the best way. So here, why was I giving this example of different motives for teaching? Because teaching in itself can be broadly said to be an activity in the mode of goodness. But then, if one is doing teaching with sahankarena vapunha, if one is doing teaching with arrogance, thinking that, oh, I am so great, I am going to teach this, and I am going to exhibit my knowledge, my learning, then that is not a very elevated stage. That will lead to the karma may be in goodness, but the karta is in passion. So Krishna is giving us both, so that over a period of time, we can choose karma in goodness as much as possible, and also we can become a karta who is in goodness. So Prabhupada explains in the purport that Shuchi. So Prabhupada says that here such a person is envious of others and prepared to do anything wrong for sense gratification. So here the word was Atmako, Himsa Atmako Shuchihi. So Himsa Atmako, actually it can refer to violence and it can also refer to envy. Why? Because generally we do violence towards others when we have envy for them. We see somebody is at a better situated than us and we feel, oh, why should that person be better situated than me? No, I want to be better situated than that person. Somebody is wealthier than us, then we decide that, okay, I want to bring down that person. So Himsa Atmako Shuchihi. So in this way, such a person is in the mode of ignorance. Sorry, is in the mode of passion. So let's move forward to the next verse. Ayuktaha prakrita stabdha shatho naishkritiko lasaha vishadi dirgha sutricha karta tamasa uchyate. So this is very graphic description by Krishna over here. Ayuktaha prakrita stabdha. Ayuktaha. So yukta means well situated, well connected. That here refers to according to scripture. Ayuktaha means that which is not according to scripture. Ayuktaha, prakritaha, stabdha. Prakritaha means materialistic. So prakriti is generally used to refer to material nature. So prakritaha is materialistic. So now there is a word prakrita sahajiya that is also often used within the Vedic tradition to refer to people who are quite materialistic, although they may seem to be devotees. So prakrit sahajiyas. So they take devotion very cheaply. Sahajiya. Prakrit means actually they are materialistic. They are based in material nature. Their conceptions and their even aspirations, they are all within the realm of matter only. But they have a religious garb to them. So prakrita refers to material. Ayukta, prakrita, stabdha. Stabdha means insolent. As the Prabhupada translates as obstinate. That means these people, once they decide to do something, then even if it is wrong, they just don't give it up. Now, actually, obstinacy and determination seem to be similar, but they are not. Determination is a positive describer. Somebody is determined to do something. That means this is good, and even if I don't get success, I'll continue to do it. So that is determination. Obstinacy, on the other hand, is something is undesirable and one should give it up. But still one doesn't give it up. Although one gets experience oneself, one learns from others, but still one doesn't give it up. So there's determination, which is positive, and the obstinacy, which is negative. So, for example, when Dhruva Maharaj goes into the forest, it requires a huge amount of determination. Even Narad Muni discourages him. But when Narad Muni discourages him, now is Dhruva Maharaj at that time he's not Maharaj, he's just Dhruva, the child Dhruva, 5-year-old child Dhruva. So is he being obstinate at that time? No, we don't call him obstinate, we call him determined. On the other hand, we see the same Narad Muni also appears in the Mahabharata, and he discourages Duryodhana. Duryodhana is being told that don't wage war against the Kauravas, you will be destroyed. There is no chance that you can survive or succeed. Don't try it. But what does he do? He just goes on in a suicidal course. Now, do we say that Duryodhana was determined? No, we say Duryodhana was obstinate. Why? What is the difference? In both cases, somebody else is giving counsel, and one is going on in a particular course of action, irrespective of the contrary counsel that is given. So why is one considered positive and another negative? That's because in general determination is for good things. So especially if something is according to scripture or is overall in harmony with the principles given in scripture, then that which is desirable, if one sticks to it even amidst obstacles, that is determination. But when one goes against scriptures and seeks one's own selfish gratification without considering what is going to be the consequence for others, and without considering the long-term consequence even for oneself. That means when one is doing something undesirable, anti-scriptural, and one rejects good advice, one rejects scriptural counsel, which is urging one to stop. At that time, it is considered obstinacy. So here, what is stabda is obstinate. So, for example, Duryodhana is stabda, Ravana is stabda, and Ravana was advised by so many people, don't go against Lord Ram. Now, right from his military general Akampana to Maricha to Vibhishan to even Kumbhakarna at one particular point of time, and of course Lord Ram sent messengers, Hanuman went, Angada went, and like that there are different people. We all tried to warn Ravana, but Ravana was never ready to listen. Shatho naishkritiko lasaha. Shatho means deceitful. Shatho means a person who is very treacherous. That means to get one's own end, the person will act in such diabolical ways that the person just doesn't care for others. And one uses others for one's own purpose. So Shatho, that is Shatho. Deceitful. One uses others for one's own good without caring for the moral principles involved. So for example, now nowadays there is the whole idea of copywriting things, of having trademark and having one's own brand fine sort of trademarks that others don't take it. So there are some people who try to get copyrights for things which have been existing in nature. For example, there are some yoga teachers who try to copyright yoga. They say that nobody in the world can do this particular yogasana. It's my hands. I can move my hands whichever way I want. I can move my legs whichever way I want. Somebody says, no, this yoga is my copyright. So nobody can do this yogasana without paying me money. This seems outrageous. Similarly, there are some natural herbs, which have been growing for generations, for millennia, in various parts of the world, especially parts of the world which focus more on agriculture. And suddenly some big companies come up, and the farmers who have been growing it, they don't even know anything about trademarks and copyrights. And suddenly some company comes up and tells that if you grow this crop up anymore, then you will be penalized. You may even be arrested. It's so horrible. But what has happened? Deceitfulness. Deceitfulness means one just is concerned only about one's own good without considering the good of others. So now, for example, there is something called as tween advertising. Tween advertising means, so there are teenagers, generally from the year 12, 13, 14, when puberty starts coming up, that's more or less teenage starting. But there are tweens. Tween comes from the word between. So those who are between the teen and the childhood. So for example, 8, 9, 10, 11. So there is advertising targeted just for these children. And when this advertisement targeted to these children, the children don't have the capacity to discriminate. Their intelligence is not yet developed, and they may like some character, they may like Harry Potter, or they may like whatever characters they are watching in the cartoons, in the movies, and in the popular video games. And within that there are advertisements. So particular characters will have particular brands which they want to purchase. And what happens is, these children, they like those characters, and along with liking those characters, they also start liking those particular brands. And those brands may be selling products which are very expensive, but the children think, oh, because I like this character, I have to take this brand. And that's how they become trapped. So this is Shato, Naishkruti. Naishkruti ko Prabhupada translates as expert at insulting others. It's a very nice way of putting it. Prabhupada is putting expert at insulting others. So that earlier we discussed this also. Parushyam. So Naishkrutiko. I said sarcasm, if it is meant to convey truth in a way that is meant to illuminate another person, then that is good. But sometimes Naishkritiko, people just delight in hurting others, and that is very unfortunate, very undesirable. Naishkritiko. Lasaha. Lasaha means alashi, lazy, alasaha. So Vishadi Dirgha Sutricha. So lazy means one doesn't do anything. And Dirgha Sutri, which will come later. Dirghasi means procrastinating, delaying. So Prabhupada says what can be done in 1 hour, they will delay for 1 year. Not do it only. So sometimes, many times people have to do follow-up. After we say A tells B, please do it. And then he has to call B dozen times. Have you done it? Have you done it? Have you done it? Have you done it? Now we see Srila Prabhupada and Bhaktivedanta Thakur just gave one instruction. One instruction, only once, practically speaking. Why don't you are an educated young man? Why don't you preach the message of Lord Chaitanya all over the world? And then second time was when Prabhupada sent a letter, when Bhaktivedanta Thakur just before departing from the world, and his last correspondence with Srila Prabhupada, he sent a letter. He said, I am confident that you can turn yourself into a very good preacher in the English language. Now, what follow-up did Bhaktivedanta Thakur do? No follow-up at all. Prabhupada was, in one sense, self-motivated. Of course, the inspiration came from his spiritual master, but his motivation was himself, individual, self-motivated. And so he moved forward, self-motivated. So, Vishadi Dirgha Sutri cha. Dirgha Sutri means exactly opposite. One has to be prodded and pushed and reminded, and still the person is not ready to do anything. And after great difficulty, the person does something. So that is Dirgha Sutri. Dirgha Sutri means postponing things a lot. Vishadi. Vishadi means one who is always morose. That morose means the person just thinks. Is so self-centered that. Now, generally, we think of selfishness as something I want more, I want more. Generally, we think of selfishness in terms of wanting more and more possessions. If the children are playing, if there are two brothers who are playing, and then there are two toys, and one of the bigger brother says, I want both the toys. And I say, don't be selfish, share, isn't it? So generally we think of selfishness in terms of things. That, when I want all the things for myself, that is selfishness. But selfishness can be at the level of thoughts also. What do we mean by selfishness at the level of thoughts? It means one wants everyone's attention upon oneself. So that can be positive when it can be positive in the sense that when I achieve something so wonderful, I am so great, I am so powerful, I am this, I am that. And in that way, one gains honor, one gains respect. That's one way of doing things. And the other is that one thinks that I am so miserable, everything has gone so wrong for me, oh, life is so bad, and this and that. And by that, again, what is one doing? One is actually wallowing in a pity pot. Pity pot means pity for oneself. And that way also, what is one doing? One is simply attracting attention to oneself. So in a perverse, there are people who are called as hypochondriacs. Hypochondriacs are people who pretend to be sick so that others will give attention to them. Somebody will come and ask, how are you? Is your health okay? Can I do anything for you? So people are so desperate for attention that they pretend to be sick. So that is physical sickness they may pretend to have. Some people can become mentally sick. Mentally sick means they always keep thinking of themselves in a negative way. Now this sort of self-pity is not humility. It's very important to understand. Self-pity is not humility. Self-pity is very self-centered. Self-centered means when I'm thinking, I. One doesn't think about others at all. Or not much. One thinks of others only to the extent that others are ready to give attention to me. So when we want to attract others' attention to us, either it can be in the sense by I do such wonderful things that by which I attract attention from others, and other alternatively it is that I act as such dreadful things have happened to me. Everything is so miserable that what can I do? My life is terrible. And then one starts going into a mode of self-pity. So in this way, both can be very undesirable. Vishadi dirgha sutri cha karta tamasa uchyate. So moroseness. In the moroseness, one always feels sorry for oneself. Oh, the world is so bad. Nothing is going to work out nice for me. Everything is going to be bad. Now, humility, I said self-pity is not humility. Humility is never self-centered. Humility is Krishna-centered. We feel small because we understand the greatness of Krishna. Now, we understand, okay, I may be great in terms of other people. I may be cleverer than others. I may be wealthier than others. I may be more good-looking than others. Whatever. That may be true. And that can make me proud. But when I have Krishna as the focus of my consciousness, then no matter how great I am, as compared to Krishna, I always remain small. And by remaining small in comparison to Krishna, I stay humble. Otherwise, I become proud. And in this way, one can move up or one can move down in one's spiritual life. So we can move up in our spiritual life by keeping our consciousness fixed on Krishna. This is a very graphic description where Krishna gives 7 different characteristics of the karta in the mode of ignorance. Ayuktaha prakruta stabda shato naishkritiko lasaha. Actually, there are 8 characters. Vishadi dirgha sutri cha. So, to the extent we can individually combat these tendencies, the tendencies to be lethargic, the tendencies to be procrastinating, the tendency to procrastinate things, the tendency to wallow in self-pity. The word wallow means like a pig. Sometimes pig goes into dirty water and bathes in dirty water. Now, actually, that is called wallowing. Now, nothing is going to happen by that. It's going to only become more dirty in many ways. But so like that, we wallow in self-pity. So that is unfortunate, and that is characteristic of the mode of ignorance. And to the extent we can give it up, to that extent we can become happy and become productive. So you'll see a lot of psychological problems. People go to psychiatrists to such a large extent, and many times that's because their whole life is in the mode of ignorance. So because their life is in the mode of ignorance, so therefore they act also in ignorant ways. And to the extent they act in ignorant ways, to the extent they have to bear the consequences of those ignorant actions. And one consequence of ignorant action is mental dejection, mental depression, and all sorts of mental problems. So some mental problems may also, of course, be because of brain defunctioning, damage, and things like that. But in many ways, if people can choose to stop living in ignorance and try to change their living to goodness, then they will find that a large number of mental problems will decrease, and one will be able to live much more peacefully and productively. So today we complete discussion of jnana, and then we discuss karma and karta in the three modes. Now in the next class we will be discussing about dhriti, buddhi and sukha. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.